Hello, friends. It is now well established that climate change is already disrupting life on our planet and is expected to cause the extinction of about a quarter of all land species by the year 2050. A recent study claimed that the total number of wild animals are likely to decrease by two-thirds by the year 2020, which is this year, in comparison to their numbers in 1970. Up to 50% of all amphibian species which have been on Earth for 250 million years or more and survived the extinction of the dinosaurs could be lost within the century. Scientists have described numerous examples of trophic cascades in marine and terrestrial ecosystems, which demonstrates the consequences of taking out one species, example a mammal or a predator, from the food chain. In the long run, the projected extinction of species will disrupt the web of life and create unforeseen challenges for mankind. New research has underscored the influence of humanity in transforming the planet, with scientists finding that over 50% of the world's land area is now dominated by human activity, with 9% of this change happening in the last 25 years alone. So, if we look at what's happening in the oceans, where the biodiversity of the entire oceans is at great risk, and we have lost about 50% of marine vertebrate populations in the last 4 decades. These impacts are very significant and dramatic, especially at the polar regions where warming is accelerated by a combination of factors. One of the worrying things is the rapid reduction of krill populations, which is a primary food source for many marine species, and it is attributed to a combination of climate change as well as increase in ultraviolet radiation due to the depletion of the ozone layer. If you look at the terrestrial species, they're literally feeling the heat. We have read about that incident a few years back when a group of tigers actually attacked several elephants in a fight over a water source. Now, many of the charismatic megafauna of the world are vulnerable to climate change, especially the changes in rainfall patterns, as it affects the food and water security. In fact, I always say that water is the local issue of global climate change for people and for biodiversity. Apex predators like the tiger are especially vulnerable to climate change due to the lack of alternative suitable habitats for them to migrate. Even the remaining tiger habitats in India are changing, and because of changes in rainfall, and it could affect the future survival across many of the existing tiger habitats like the Sundarbans and many of the forests in central India as well. Now, if you look at the world's natural forests, many of those are affected by global warming and changes in this rainfall patterns. In fact, vegetation change is very much a threat to the natural forest across the world. India's Western Ghats, the Himalayas, grasslands, and island ecosystems are all known to be very highly vulnerable to temperature rise. In Assam, where I live, the habitat of the Indian rhinoceros, for example, is sustained by abundant rainfall, and any changes in this precipitation patterns could affect the availability of fodder. Similarly, changes in rainfall patterns could affect the availability of fodder for the Indian elephant and force them into new migration patterns and create new areas of human wildlife conflicts. Now, one of the other things that really worries everybody is the decline of pollinators and insects. We have been reading about how there has been a catastrophic decrease of insects across the world, and it really drove home one day when recently when somebody mentioned to me about the lack of insects, dead insects on the windshield. just 10 years back when we were driving, like in the night, especially in winter, we'd have to stop and clean the windshield of dead insects. But these days there aren't any insects, and that is affecting the birds that are dependent on these insects. And that's an example of the tropic cascade, and the entire habitat is destroyed because of this changes, the slightest change in temperatures or rainfall patterns. So friends, the biodiversity of the world is been affected mostly adversely due to warming, and this warming is happening because of human development activities, and more importantly human greed. As the COVID-19 pandemic has shown, we really cannot take things for granted, and nature will fight back in ways that we cannot imagine. And therefore we really have to think, now that we have the time during this lockdown. Even the 50th anniversary celebrations of Earth Day has to be digital because of this global confinement. So we really have to think about the future course of action once all of this is over and we have been able to overcome the coronavirus threats. Do we go back to living life the way we have been doing, or do we make changes? Something that has become evident over the last few weeks is that in this shutdown, nature has been quick to recover. We have seen those videos, those images from around the world. So if we just leave nature alone, it will recover. People talk about rewilding. I think we don't even need to do that. We just need to let her live, let the earth breathe again, and all of the biodiversity, all of nature will recover and make the planet a better place for all of us. Thank you very much.